Okay, so this tutorial is going to pick up where we left off, and what we're going to do is we're going to use volumetric lighting and a spotlight to create some light rays coming down onto these objects. And we're also going to be using a disk, and we're going to be looking at the alpha channel of a material, which we haven't really looked at yet, in order to make this happen. So to start with, let's go ahead and get rid of this light 1 and light 2 that we created in the last section. Let's turn on our spotlight again. I'm going to go ahead and render this once. Okay, cool. So I do have noise in here. In order to start with something simple, I'm going to go to the noise tab for that light, and I'm going to go ahead and just say none for now. So it's an even light source, so we know what's happening. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take this light, I'm going to rotate it so that it is more or less vertical, right? So, so it can go down, point down onto the objects that I want to illuminate. And then I'm actually going to zoom out a fair amount. This cone of light is so massive that I'm also going to lower the intensity because I don't want this to be too high above the surface, but I'd really like, there we go, you know, full intensity basically right where that is, and then the visibility can, you know, go beyond the edges of this boundary if I want. I'm going to go ahead and render this, and right, so this is what we have to start with. We've got this light source way up high, and we've got our objects here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a disk. And the disk is already the orientation we want, but what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull this disk closer to the light source, and let's go ahead and make it a little bit smaller. I believe under this, there we go. If you zoom in a little bit, under this arrow is that thing. I'm just going to make this about this a little bit bigger than where it intersects the thing, and I can adjust where this is later. So now I've got this disk. Now if I render this, right, all the lighting and visibility is there, and there's a little bit of spillover happening on the objects below, right, but not much. And so what we need to do is we need to apply a material to this disk. So I'm going to create a new material. Granted, there's a whole bunch of them here, but I'm going to create this material 6. I'm going to open this up. I do not need color to be set on this. We can look at that in the future, but right now we're going to leave it as off. I also don't need reflectance set, but what I am going to do is I'm going to use the alpha channel, and maybe let's leave color on just to make it easier to see what's happening. So I'm going to use the alpha channel. Alpha is the technical word used in digital imaging for transparency. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making this object transparent, but not evenly. And so we're going to use noise like we use so many other times because it's just a really effective. And you'll already see that it's starting to impact the way the surface looks. But we're going to make some adjustments here. First, we're going to find one of the harder turbulences we can find. Let's see if just turbulence would work. Wavy turbulence actually might be really nice. And then let's reduce the octaves to 3. So it's a little bit, or maybe even 1. Let's just see. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit cleaner for our source, for what we're doing. And then we're going to increase the low clip some. Right? Anything that's black is going to be transparent. Anything that's white is going to be opaque. And so I want to increase the contrast in that. And raising this low clip and high clip is one way I can do that. And then increasing the contrast obviously makes a difference too. So anything that's white is going to be opaque. Anything that is black is going to be transparent. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it set at somewhere around here. I think this is going to be too big, but let's go ahead and apply it and see what we get, because we haven't scaled the noise at all yet. All right, so now I've got this disk, right, and you can kind of see that there's areas where I can see through and areas where I can't. So let's go ahead and render this. Right, and so when I render that, you can see, especially when I render it from the position I just rendered it, you can see that above the disk, the light is traveling very, very evenly, but below the disk, that volumetric lighting is creating these light rays that come down on the surface of the objects. Right? Okay. Now, if I wanted some of that noise on that bottom surface, what I need to do is, right, shadows are really soft. And so the shadows of this noise are really soft because this light's so close, right? So if I wanted to make this, right, have stronger shadows, what I need to do is take this light and I need to raise it significantly higher above the surface. Right, I'm going to need my cone of visibility to be longer. I'm going to need this cone, right, of intensity to be longer. And then I'm going to need to bring this disk much further up from the surface. And again, I just need to make sure that it is large enough to intersect with that. And now I should, if I've done this right, oh, I don't even have light. You can see the light up there. I see really even shadows to it. Maybe that the visibility is just impacting that. Let's go ahead and pull this out a little bit further. There we go, right? So there's some light rays, but it looks like no matter what, I'm not going to get hard shadows on there, and I'd have to do something else to get those hard shadows of the light. So something else I can do if I want multiple colored light rays, what I can do is I can just go ahead and click Control to create a second and third lights. And then for each of those lights, I can adjust the color a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and adjust it a lot, so it's really obvious what's happening. So one of these lights is going to be pretty blue. And then the other one of those lights I just created is going to be, we'll just make it pretty yellow. Right, and so if now I go through this and I rotate my view, and I'm just really focusing on the light rays at this point, and I do that, then I can get this like spectrum of colored light that goes down on the surface. Now these objects may be way overlit right now, right? But so now I can get this lighting effect of this spectrum of bright and dark areas. I don't know why Cinema4D keeps doing that to me, but it does. Right, and so now those lights are being mixed and the colors coming down. So I get a nice mixed lighting on the surface, but I also get these individual rays of color. So this is one of those more advanced lighting effects that can work really well to create some really beautiful lights. Now there's one final thing I want to show you as a way of creating like almost like a deep sea effect. So we're going to turn these lights off. And I'm going to leave the disk on, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to create, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another light, and I'm going to create an array. I'm going to make this light a child of the array. And then this is an omni light, right? And so there's actually several, now that I can select this array, right, there's all of these lights here. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and adjust the amplitude so that these lights are not uniform. And I think I'll leave that as it is. And with this, right, this is just one, these are all going to be the same color. But I'm going to go ahead and set that color to, a reasonable purplish blue. And then I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to leave shadow. I'm going to go ahead and turn shadows on. And I'm going to make the visible light volumetric. And then I'm also going to take my array and I'm going to make the radius, let's go ahead and make the radius 500. Right? And my volumetric lighting, you'll notice, I have these pretty big rings of volume, and if I have my light selected, I will find one little orange point here where I could make an adjustment on that. And so I'm going to adjust this a little bit. Now in this case, right, all of these lights are going to be you know, somewhat even, and maybe I need to go to my array and make my amplitude 200, right? So this spreads them out a little bit more. And I'm just going to go ahead and render this, right? And so one of the things that this does, right, is it allows me to have these little volume areas of light. And if I rotate my view just right, so that so that at least one of these has the camera is in front of the camera, maybe I need to just rotate my view a little bit. Let's pull back. Let's rotate here so that we'll maybe be aligned with, say, this light. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my light, and I'm actually going to go ahead and make these volumes much bigger so they intersect a little bit more. And this is when you're doing lighting like this is when it gets really annoying to have all these lights not on their own layer, like we talked about before. I'm going to go ahead and render this now. And so what this can do, and this is, you know, pretty uniform, and I'm trying to do this quickly, but I don't know if my mouse is doing something. I have no idea. Usually it should hold something until I click a button, right? But what I can do is I can create these I can create a scene that has a lot of like really hazy lighting everywhere throughout this. Now, I've done this with just even lights, but let's go ahead and add some noise to this. Let's just go ahead and say we're just going to do visibility, because it's a little bit faster. I'm going to leave it at soft turbulence, but I'm going to set the visibility size to 50 centimeters in all directions. Right, and so you'll notice that that adding noise is significantly slowing this down, but it is adding a lot more. Right, a lot more variety to this. Now, usually when you're creating a scene like this, what you would want to do is if you say it's underwater, you'd want the lights that are lower to be darker, more or less, and the lights that are higher to be brighter. And so what I can do is I can say, let's just make 3 copies of this light. And let's make our radius, I'm going to make it a little smaller, 350. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this array and paste it. And with the first array, I'm going to move it down a little bit. And with the second array, I'm going to move it up a little bit. And with that other array being higher up, I'm also going to change the light color. And I'm going to make it, let's go to general, I'm going to make it more of like an aquamarine color. And this might be too bright. Right, this is all, I'm experimenting through this. I'm not setting it based on previous settings, though I've done similar scenes in the past. And then I'm going to go ahead and render this. Right, and so now I get a much different, more subtle backdrop in terms of the color in this scene. And it actually looks a lot more like it's underwater, right? There's brighter light and the color is different up top. And then as we go deeper than the scene, it gets darker. And if I wanted to amplify that more, I could always take the light color in the lower lights and make it significantly darker blue. And then I should get more depth in that lower part of the image. Right, now one of the things I do have to deal with here is the light intensity is pretty insane right now in terms of illuminating the objects on this in this scene, and so I'd have to probably dial down the visible intensity while keeping the brightness of the fog higher, right? Or I could set it so that all of these lights don't illuminate these objects, and I actually choose one light this color and one light that color to illuminate the object, so I have more control. Right, but so you can see that this creates this like hazy look. If I had an object closer to the camera, right, it's going to be much clearer, but it'll still be blue. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to grab a platonic, which is huge, and make it, I don't know, only 30 centimeters in size. and then pull it much closer to the camera and pull it up here, and I'm going to give it a just general like white material so that it reflects light pretty well, and I'm going to render that. And you'll see, right, because it's closer and it doesn't have as much fog in front of it, it appears, right, sharper and more in the front view, whereas everything else has a significantly bluer cast. And you can even see these surfaces are being illuminated by the blue lights below, and these surfaces are being illuminated by the greenish lights that are above. All right, so this is one other really nice, easy way to create a background like this. If you were to make these more red in color, you can very easily make it look like you're inside a a body cavity, or right inside a blood vessel, things like that. You can use this similar lighting to create like an internal sense, or whatever whatever kind of lights you want in order to make something like this happen. Awesome. So this has been the tutorial series on lighting effects, and there are plenty more you can do, and we'll look at global illumination and luminance and all of that in a later tutorial.